We weren't just pawnbrokers on TV. This was real life, real money, real risk. That's how Les Gold once described his world. For years, he stood behind the counter of hardcore pawn as the loud, fearless boss everyone knew. Cameras rolled, deals closed fast, and millions of viewers watched him turn chaos into cash. To the outside world, Les Gold looked untouchable. But fame doesn't always mean safety. At his peak, Les was more than a TV star. He owned massive stores, made bold moves, and believed his success would last forever. Then something shifted. The cameras stopped, the applause faded, and one by one, the pillars holding his empire began to crack. Money drained faster than it came in. Trust broke. Health failed. Problems stacked up quietly, far from the spotlight. This isn't the story most fans remember. Behind the shouting matches and big wins was a chain of decisions, bad timing, and hidden struggles that pushed Les closer to the edge. What looked like strength on screen slowly turned into survival off-screen. So how did a man who once had everything end up losing almost all of it? And which moment truly started the fall no one saw coming? Stay with us, because what happened behind the cameras is far more shocking than whatever aired on TV. From local pawn shop to TV power. Les Gold did not start as a celebrity. He started as a businessman. In Detroit, pawn shops were never shiny places filled with comfort. They were built for survival. People walked in carrying stress, fear, and urgency. They needed cash fast. Every deal carried risk. Every item told a story. Les learned early that success in this world depended on sharp judgment and fast decisions. One wrong call could erase a day's profit. One bad loan could sink trust. He trained himself to spot value in seconds and protect his money at all costs. American Jewelry and Loan grew because of that discipline. It was not luck. It was repetition, long hours, careful pricing, knowing when to say yes and when to walk away. Over time, the shop earned a reputation across Detroit. People knew they would get straight answers there. Some walked in desperation, others hopeful. Les handled them all with the same rule: emotion stays outside the deal. That approach kept the doors open when others failed. Slowly, the store expanded. More inventory, more staff, more daily traffic. It became one of the largest pawn shops in the city. Then television entered the picture. When producers discovered the shop, they didn't just see a business, they saw tension, raised voices, fast talk, human conflict. Cameras loved the pressure behind the counter. Hardcore pawn was born from that chaos. At first, it felt like a side project, a spotlight on daily work. But the response was instant. Viewers connected to the raw energy, ratings climbed fast. Episodes spread across households nationwide. Les Gold became a familiar face almost overnight. His loud voice, sharp moves, and no-nonsense style turned him into a TV figure people recognized on the street. The shop was no longer just local, it was national. Money flowed in from network checks, public appearances, and branded deals. Merchandise sold. Lines formed outside the store. The business felt unstoppable. But fame changes math. Before television, risk stayed inside the building. After fame, risk followed everywhere. The store no longer carried only local products. It carried expectations from millions of viewers. Every argument could become a clip. Every deal could be judged. Employees were no longer just workers. They became characters. Family members became storylines. Private tension turned into public entertainment. Decisions that once happened quietly now live forever online. Wins looked bigger. Losses looked harsher. A mistake that once faded in a day now waited for replay. The shop still operated the same way, but the world around it had changed. Success created confidence. Confidence pushed risk. The attention made Les believe the momentum would last. He trusted his instincts more than ever. After all, they had carried him this far. But the rules he lived by before fame no longer worked the same way under a spotlight. The pawn shop had survived pressure before. Detroit had tested it. Economic downturns had tested it. Desperate days had tested it. But fame brought a different kind of weight. It added pride. It added an image. It added the need to prove something beyond profit. The cracks didn't show right away. Sales stayed strong. Fans kept coming. Cameras kept rolling. From the outside, everything looked solid. Inside, the balance was shifting. The business was no longer just about loans and inventory. It was about perception, growth, and scale. What once thrived on control now faced influence it could not fully manage. Fame lifted the shop higher than ever before. It also placed it on ground that was far less stable. The rise felt permanent. The fall, when it began, would feel sudden. And at that moment, no one could see how close the edge really was. When big money met big risk. With cash flowing from hardcore pawn and Detroit slowly recovering from economic struggle, Les Gold saw what he believed was a golden opportunity. The city had empty buildings, cheap land, and neighborhoods that once thrived but now seemed forgotten. In his eyes, these places were a hidden treasure. Buy low, fix fast, rent steady, long-term gain. It sounded simple. It sounded smart. Detroit needed revival, and he believed he could deliver both profit and purpose. The reality, however, was far harsher than any plan could predict. Old buildings carried hidden dangers. Foundations were weak, sometimes dangerously so. Wiring was outdated, unsafe, and often required full replacement. Water damage, mold, and asbestos lurked behind walls that looked fine at first glance. Costs that seemed manageable on paper quickly spiraled out of control. What Les had estimated at a few million for repairs escalated dramatically. Estimates doubled, then tripled. Money he had saved for security and operations vanished into concrete, steel, and labor bills almost overnight. Contractors became impatient. Timelines stretched endlessly. Half-finished buildings sat open to the elements, slowly deteriorating under rain, wind, and vandalism. Every week, the investment bled cash, and no income came in to offset it. The vision that had seemed so promising now felt like a trap. This was not a sudden blow. It was a slow, grinding loss that wore away at both resources and confidence. Despite the warnings, Les's ambition pushed him further. He decided to expand the brand beyond Detroit. A flashy new pawn shop in Las Vegas was planned, positioned on a busy strip where tourists could see the brand in person, browse merchandise, and even meet the Gold family. To an outsider, it looked perfect, a high-profile location with potential for massive traffic and steady revenue. Yet the cost of entry was staggering. The rent alone was astronomical. Utilities, staffing, insurance, and maintenance quickly added up. Month after month, the store struggled. Foot traffic was lower than expected. Tourists often preferred larger, established competitors. Running costs crushed any profits, and losses mounted steadily. Les's pride and belief in the brand delayed tough decisions. Closing the shop early would feel like admitting failure, but the reality was unforgiving. Cash continued to burn. Staff were paid, bills were settled, but there was no buffer left for unforeseen emergencies. Two major bets in real estate in Detroit and the Las Vegas expansion were now both faltering simultaneously. The empire that had thrived on careful deals and rapid cash flow was now tied up in fixed costs and slow-moving investments. Pawn shops rely on constant movement of items coming in, loans being made, and sales happening daily. These big projects locked significant capital, halting that movement. When cash flow slowed, the cracks grew visible. Les Gold had built a business that survived Detroit's ups and downs for decades. He had faced economic pressure, desperate clients, and fierce competition. But nothing in his experience could have fully prepared him for this combination of risk. Ambition, high stakes, and timing had collided. The shop that had once been a symbol of careful judgment and steady growth now faced exposure on a scale that felt overwhelming. At the heart of it, these moves were meant to expand, to secure long-term success. Instead, they introduced vulnerability. The more money invested, the higher the stakes. What had been a strong, predictable system now depended on factors beyond Les's control. Construction delays, rising costs, tourist behavior, and city recovery rates. The empire was under pressure, and as every investor knows, when fixed costs are high and revenue slows, even a small misstep can snowball into a catastrophe. By the time the first real cracks appeared, the situation was already difficult. Detroit's buildings sat unfinished. The Las Vegas store struggled to attract enough business. Money was tied up. Confidence began to waver. Two ventures that had promised growth had instead set the stage for serious financial strain, quietly eroding the empire Les had spent a lifetime building. Family, pressure, and internal damage. On screen, the family fights looked dramatic, entertaining, and sometimes even humorous. Off-screen, the reality was far heavier. These arguments were not for ratings, they were real conflicts that drained energy, patience, and trust. Les Gold's children, Ashley and Seth, had grown up in the business. They knew its routines, its pressures, and its value better than most employees. From a young age, they learned how to evaluate items, negotiate with customers, and handle stressful situations without losing composure. They were not outsiders. They were part of the system. As they matured, Ashley and Seth began wanting more influence. They worked hard, contributed ideas, and believed the shop could evolve with new strategies. Ashley, with her attention to detail and marketing instincts, often pushed for modern approaches. Seth, on the other hand, focused on operations and efficiency. Both wanted a voice in decisions that affected not only the business, but their future within it. Les, however, had built the company on decades of experience. He trusted his methods, the ways he had learned to survive Detroit's market, and he resisted changes that might jeopardize stability. Tension built slowly. Small disagreements grew into prolonged standoffs. Decisions stalled because no side would fully compromise. Trust, which had been the foundation of both family and business, began to weaken. The emotional weight of these conflicts was compounded by the daily pressures of running a high-profile business. Staff noticed the tension. Customers felt the shift in atmosphere. What once had been a tight-knit, confident team started showing signs of strain. When Seth decided to leave and open his own pawn shop just a few miles away, it cut deeper than a simple business split. Staff members who had been loyal to him followed. Customers who had trusted the Gold family for years shifted allegiances. The loyalty Les had assumed would remain unshakable fractured in a matter of weeks. Ashley, observing the turmoil and seeking her own path, soon stepped away as well, launching a jewelry-focused venture that drew away even more of the customer base. What had once looked like a solid family empire now began to crumble from within. Legal battles replaced conversations. Where once a quick discussion could resolve an issue, lawyers now intervene. Money that could have been reinvested in the shop, paid to employees, or used to upgrade security and inventory instead flowed into courtrooms. Months of court fees, contract disputes, and negotiations drained resources, slowing recovery from the financial strain already present from expansions and other investments. Even more damaging than the financial cost was the reputation damage. Word spreads fast in local communities, and customers noticed the shifts. The brand that had been synonymous with trust, reliability, and family values suddenly seemed unstable. Regulars hesitated to return, worried about inconsistent service or divided attention. Staff morale dropped as uncertainty grew. Every decision felt heavier. Confidence, both internally and externally, waned. Les Gold had not lost just partners, he had lost the continuity he had envisioned for the business. The future he had hoped to hand down to his children was no longer guaranteed. The store continued to operate, but the core relationships, trust, and loyalty that made it strong were shaken. Internal wounds deepened quietly, festering behind the scenes, and just when it seemed like the family might rebuild, an unexpected outside force arrived. The timing of this new challenge would prove critical. External pressures have a way of exposing weaknesses that internal conflicts alone cannot. Les's family struggles, while painful, were only the beginning of a series of events that would test the limits of both his business, pandemic, health, and financial shock. When the COVID-19 lockdowns hit, pawn shops across the country felt the immediate impact. But for Les Gold, the timing could not have been worse. Doors closed suddenly, cutting off the lifeblood of the business, daily cash flow. Loans, sales, and pawns, all the transactions that kept the shop alive, vanished almost overnight. Bills, however, did not pause. Rent, utilities, salaries for key employees, insurance, and other recurring costs continued to pile up. The income that had once covered these expenses was gone. For months, Les watched the numbers shrink, his financial reserves thinning dangerously fast. Attempts to adapt failed to replace the essential in-person trust the shop depended on. Unlike retail stores that could pivot to online sales or delivery models, pawn shops relied on personal interaction. Customers wanted to see their items appraised directly, negotiate in real time, and feel secure about deals. Video calls or digital estimates did not inspire the same confidence. Many regular clients stayed home, cautious about the virus, uncertain about the new systems, and hesitant to risk their valuables. The business's steady rhythm ground to a halt, and Les's financial buffer began to erode. As the economic strain worsened, a more personal crisis emerged. Years of constant stress, long hours, and high-stakes decision-making began to take a toll on Les's health. In December 2020, he suffered a serious heart attack that required emergency surgery to repair 4 blocked arteries. The timing was brutal. Recovery was slow and demanding, requiring weeks of rest and careful monitoring. During this period, Les could not maintain his usual presence in the stores. His leadership, intuition, and hands-on approach, once critical to pricing items and managing negotiations, were suddenly absent. The medical bills were staggering. Having previously chosen a health insurance plan with lower monthly premiums but higher out-of-pocket costs, Les now faced a financial storm. He ended up paying over $300,000 from his own pocket. Every procedure, hospital stay, and specialist visit added weight to an already burdened financial system. With limited ability to work, he relied on staff who, while capable, lacked the experience and instincts he had honed over decades. Deals slowed. Mispricing became more frequent. Longtime clients, accustomed to Les's personal touch, began drifting away. Debt began to pile up from every angle. Losses from the shop, mounting medical bills, and the lingering legal costs from family disputes all compounded. Each problem fed the next, creating a cycle of stress and urgency that seemed impossible to break. What the shop had survived in the past economic recessions, local downturns, and operational challenges was nothing compared to the simultaneous pressures of a pandemic, a health crisis, and an overextended empire. The man once known for control and meticulous oversight now faced limits he could not negotiate away. Strength, which had been his defining trait, transformed into endurance. Decisions that had once been simple required careful consideration and constant adaptation. Survival replaced growth. Every day became about keeping the doors open, maintaining minimal operations, and ensuring that the few customers who still came in left satisfied. Even as Les focused on recovery and business continuity, worse challenges loomed on the horizon. Pandemic restrictions fluctuated, uncertainty remained high, and the financial gaps created by halted operations left the business more vulnerable than ever. Health and finance collided, creating a pressure cooker scenario in which every setback had the potential to trigger another. The foundation Les had worked decades to build was now strained under forces he could not fully control. By the end of this period, it was clear that the combination of pandemic, personal health crises, and financial pressure had reshaped the landscape entirely. The empire that had once felt untouchable was now on fragile ground, teetering between recovery and further decline. Lessons from the past no longer guarantee safety, and every choice carries far more weight than it ever did before. The final blows that shattered it all. For decades, Les Gold's reputation had been one of the strongest assets in his business. His public image, tough but fair, sharp but honest, was carefully built through years of customer interactions, television appearances, and community recognition. People trusted the name Gold because it represented reliability and knowledge. But over time, even the strongest reputations can fracture. And for Les, that crack appeared first online. Social media, once a tool to celebrate fame, became a source of vulnerability. Rumors and accusations spread quickly, often with little or no evidence. Viewers, locals, and customers saw fragments of claims and began questioning what had once been unquestionable. Even loyal clients hesitated. Foot traffic dropped. The people who had trusted Les with valuables for years started second-guessing old agreements, uncertain whether the store would continue to operate as it had. Doubt, even when unfounded, had a tangible effect. Just as public trust faltered, the most devastating blow struck: a major theft at the Detroit shop. Cleverly executed, the thieves bypassed the security system and targeted the vault and display cases with precision. Millions of dollars in high-value inventory, rare jewelry, collectible watches, musical instruments, and other items carefully curated over decades vanished in one night. The vault that had been considered secure and the inventory that had been the backbone of the business suddenly became symbols of vulnerability. Insurance coverage, meant to act as a safety net, fell far short of the losses. Les had trimmed costs in previous years, underestimating the risk of such a catastrophic event. The compensation received covered only a fraction of the true value. What had once been a tangible safeguard, the carefully built inventory, was gone, along with the leverage it provided for loans, deals, and financial stability. Years of expertise and strategic purchasing evaporated almost overnight, leaving Les with little more than empty shelves and mounting financial obligations. As if the theft was not enough, tax authorities entered the scene. Audits of previous years revealed inconsistencies and underreported amounts, largely stemming from complex business dealings, cash-based operations, and past mismanagement. Penalties and interest escalated rapidly. Each audit compounded the stress, narrowing options that once seemed open. Money that could have stabilized the stores now had to cover back taxes, legal fees, and penalties. Decisions that used to focus on growth are now focused on survival. By the time the dust settled, the picture was stark. The empire that had once expanded with confidence, Detroit properties, TV fame, merchandise, and multiple pawn shops, was no longer growing. It was shrinking. Assets were sold, staff had been reduced, and operations were scaled down to the bare minimum. Every day became a balancing act. Keep the doors open, pay essential bills, maintain credibility with the remaining customers, and navigate a path forward in the shadow of enormous loss. Fame, which had once amplified success, now amplified the collapse. The cameras, the network, and the public eye that once celebrated his deals now highlighted every misstep, every missed opportunity, every vulnerability. Where once Les had been untouchable in perception, he now carried the weight of public scrutiny alongside financial ruin. What remained was a man facing a reality most people never imagine. Years of strategy, sweat, and personal sacrifice were now measured not in growth or influence, but in recovery, debt, and lessons learned the hard way. The Gold name, once a symbol of strength, now stood as a reminder of fragility. Les Gold, the TV star, the businessman, the negotiator, and the father, was left carrying a loss that few outside could truly comprehend. The empire had survived Detroit's toughest economic periods, weathered family conflicts, and navigated personal health crises. But the combination of public scrutiny, massive theft, and financial penalties delivered blows too heavy to ignore. Survival, not expansion, had become the goal. And in the quiet moments after the cameras stopped rolling, Les faced the challenge that fame, wealth, and experience had never prepared him for. Starting over amidst the rubble of a once thriving empire. Les Gold's story is not just about money. It's about pressure, about believing momentum will last forever, about how fast success can vanish when risk outpaces control. The cameras showed strength. Real life delivered weight. Step-by-step choices collided with timing, health, and trust. What looked solid shattered under strain. Some will say it was bad luck. Others will say it was a risky judgment. The truth likely lives in between. Success gave confidence. Confidence invited danger. And danger arrived all at once. The fall was not loud at first, it was quiet. Then, devastating. So what do you think broke the empire for good? Was it expansion, family conflict, or the moment everything hit at once? If this story opened your eyes, for more deep stories behind famous faces, stay with us. The next truth might surprise you even more.